I'm Steve, and this is Timbo. We welcome you to a catastrophic event. In today's segment of my interview with Simone Ramel-McKay, Program Manager for Spokane County Emergency Management, we continue to cover who the first responder is, the various systems set up to give warnings of disaster, and how to access them. Perhaps the most critical part of this episode is the opportunities Simone discusses for you to get involved with local rescues and emergency response, along with training opportunities to help better equip you for emergencies.
Right.
The people who
it's important
didn't.
to remember, yeah, a lot of people don't carry any cash, and I think, oh, I wish I could get you to just carry a little bit, $20 at least, something that can get you some fuel or get you something to eat or help you do something.
Right.
If you need to.
Right.
So.
That's exactly right. Okay, so we kind of covered this, but what type of disasters does SCEM, SCEM,
yes, there you
my
go.
bad, get involved with?
Any disaster. So that was one thing I think is important for everybody to understand, that emergency management supports any major emergency or disaster. It doesn't matter what it is. If law enforcement, fire services, or our elected officials, whether they're from Spokane County elected officials or they're from Millwood elected officials or Spokane Valley elected officials, if they have a disaster in their area and they need more help, or their responders, firefighters, law enforcement, emergency medical response, whatever it may be, they need more help, then they come to us and say, hey, we need more resources, can you help us? And so we get involved, whatever it may be. It just depends on the level of how impacted somebody is. So, as I mentioned earlier, there may be a house fire in Spokane Valley. They don't need any help. They do their best to put out the house fire, and they never call us. However, maybe they have a major fire in, let's say, Fire District 8 or Fire District 4 or one of the other fire districts that's a little bit further out, and it keeps growing very quickly. They may ask for resources right away in doing evacuation alerts. Maybe that's the only help they need initially. It's just, hey, we need to put out more evacuation alerts. So our dispatchers will do some of that. Our local, it's called Spokane Regional Emergency Communications for the entire region, for entire county. It's called, and they do call them Shrek for short. They do say Shrek, but people are confused by that. So we just say the Regional Emergency Communications Organization. Their dispatchers are trained to launch alerts, and it's through the software system called Code Red. It's a program under what we call Alert Spokane, and the software is Code Red, and so they will launch evacuation alerts if the incident commander, the fire incident commander, requests it. However, there are times when as with the Medical Lake and Oregon Road or Elk fires last summer, the fires were moving so quickly, we wanted to notify anyone with a cell phone in the area.
Okay.
And that is what's called a wireless emergency alert. It's like an Amber Alert. It comes to your phone. You have you don't have to register to get it. It will just come to your phone. If you're in the area of an incident, we'll send a wireless emergency alert, and our agency sends those alerts, not the dispatchers. So,
Okay.
and that's because we have to have special training and a special agreement with FEMA to send those alerts. So, it would be our duty officer. We always have someone on shift 24/7 for a week, and we take turns. So every week, so there's always somebody on shift, and all the staff take turns to be the duty officer. And so if we get a call and say, hey, we need some evacuation alerts for this fast-moving fire, then the duty officer will send those alerts, or may get help from other staff. As with the Oregon Road and Medical Lake fires, we were nonstop sending alerts.
I bet.
So it was pretty intense.
Yeah, yeah, I can well imagine. And, or even like a major accident, if there was several vehicles involved and it becomes this huge nightmare, you want to make sure that people avoid that area.
Right,
So
and so-
emergency rigs can come in and out.
Exactly, and so we'll work maybe with Washington State Patrol, if it's the freeway, or Department of Transportation, DOT, or just a local law enforcement may say, hey, can you send an alert out for people to avoid this area?
Right.
And so sometimes they'll do that with Code Red, and sometimes they'll also do that with the federal alert, which is called a WEA, a wireless emergency alert. So-
And that makes
Yeah.
total sense, because
it
you're
just
just
depends
trying
what it
to mitigate the
Yes,
mess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. We're kind of blending my questions in.
I know,
so
that's okay, no
Okay.
worries.
I don't want. Okay. At what point and whose decision is it for SCEM to become involved in a local disaster?
Basically, what happens is, it's all about the responders. So
Okay.
they are the incident commanders, in a sense, whether and it's usually, like I said, law enforcement or fire services. So occasionally, it will go, we could also have, as you know, we had a COVID incident, COVID response, and so the health district was involved, and the health district came to us and said they needed help. But usually it's law enforcement or fire services on a general basis that says, hey, we need some help, will you support us? It doesn't mean we'll automatically start our EOC, what's called the Emergency Operations Center. It depends on how much support they need. So COVID obviously got so big and so much help was needed that we opened up an Emergency Operations Center just to support COVID response.
Okay.
That was, law enforcement was involved, fire services, the health district, Department of Health. I mean, so many people were involved with it because it was such a big deal. So it really depends. We get involved. There was another incident where it was norovirus at a shelter, at a homeless shelter.
Oh.
The problem was there were a lot of people who were sick with the norovirus. So the danger was that it could spread throughout the entire community of homeless.
Oh.
And could end up impacting other people. So if
Okay.
you don't contain it, you could end up spreading it. And there, we initially had the health district, and then the city of Spokane came to us and said they needed some help. So it just depends. So we did activate our Emergency Operations Center because a lot of help was needed to get it organized. How do you do this? This has never been done before. So how do you solve that problem of keeping something contained that, by its nature, being in a homeless shelter, could easily transfer to many of the homeless
Right.
shelters, to the streets, to other people? You never know how serious it could get, so we were activated to try and help resolve that. And we did, as a collaborative effort, we got it resolved pretty quickly. It was astounding, actually.
Really?
But when you have the mind to people together and everyone focused on solving a problem, you get it done. It happens a lot faster. If you all are trying to do your own thing and you're not working together,
Right.
it takes longer. So that's why we bring people together. That's our job is a lot. We're facilitators. We collaborate with others to make good decisions so that we can help the community. And you do better as a team
Right.
than individually.
Right.
So
Yeah. What is it?
the sum of the parts,
Yeah.
is better than individual parts.
Than the individual parts.
Yeah, it's a good phrase. I forget exactly it, but
Yeah.
basically you had it, yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, so is SCEM a hands-on organization, or do they just simply coordinate with other agencies such as fire departments, medical services, police, and volunteers to control the event?
So as I stated, is we really are a collaborative organization. We don't do the hands-on operations. We're not first responders. We support them, and we may be activated in the same time frame So they're responding to a fire, we're ready, our duty officer is ready to help support them. So hands-on, no, we don't necessarily go and help them fight a fire. That's not
Okay.
what we do. That's their expertise. Same with law enforcement. They have their expertise. What we can do is if things get out of control, or not out of, that's not fair to say because they're often in control, that's inappropriate. If things get too big too fast, they may appear out of control. So law enforcement may have a control of part of it, but it's expanding so quickly they can't manage it all. It's too much. Same with fire services. They have the control over the area that they're dealing with, but they may not be able to deal with how fast the fire is growing. So then they come to us and we're a partner and help them get resources. So.
Yeah, that's kind of like during ice storm when I was working at Kaiser at the time. I was coming down Argonne Hill, and it was night because I worked swing shift at that time. And I came over Argonne Hill and I looked, and there was one small area of Spokane that had its lights on. Everything else was totally black. Everywhere you looked, and you could hear the what are those called, transformers?
Yes.
Blowing up on a
Right.
regular basis as
Popping and-
powers, or
Yes.
as trees hit them or whatever, and you see flashes all over the place. But that was just a slowly developing thing.
Right, and that would have been, and we did get involved with that ice storm. We also have had some major snowstorms where we've had to help and get medicines to people who were stuck. And we had a snowmobile. That was a volunteer team of snowmobiles who could go out and get medicine to those who needed it, or to pick up people to try and get them to appointments if they had important medical
Oh, that's
appointments.
cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, we have a great search and rescue team, and then part of that team, we have a small group of men and women who drive snowmobiles and ATVs in summer, and if they're needed, we will contact them through our search and rescue coordinator. So we have a lot of volunteers that help out in the event of either a missing person or a lost hiker, or someone got lost skiing. They left Mount Spokane and somehow ended somewhere in Idaho and they got lost. So we had to send people out to help find them. So there's
Wow.
all of that is coordinated through our organization, and the reason that is that we make sure the volunteers are protected. So if anything were to happen to them, they have insurance that they'll be taken care of. So
I see.
they are then registered with us as emergency workers, and that's another area that I work on quite a bit, is getting volunteers to become part of the system as an emergency worker, so that if we have a major emergency or disaster, we can call them and say, hey, we need help. And we did that during COVID. We contacted people and said, hey, can you help us out at the check-in for our emergency operations center? We needed to check temperatures, and we needed to make sure people were healthy, that they were using hand sanitizer, that they had masks, and things that initially just to keep everyone protected, because we were all working together. Here we are trying to separate everybody because COVID was spreading so quickly, but yet to be able to respond, we had to work together. We were all separated out in the rooms really well, but we decided, hey, we should wear masks as we're still all working together. And nobody got sick, knock on wood. We did really well in keeping everyone protected. So
That's cool.
yeah, it was a major situation, yeah. But just one example of many of the things that we've done to respond in this area.
So it's further down my list, but since you mentioned part of your job is working with volunteers, and what skills are you looking for, and does SCEM offer training to those willing to volunteer? I jumped ahead, but basically you kind of just did part of that, so I thought we'd just dovetail.
Yeah, sure. So we We have a search and rescue organization, and they have a special academy. So they have a special training, and it's a 12-week academy, and it always starts the beginning of January. And so we usually train about 50 to 75 volunteers every year. And so they then will work through the academy for their training, and they get all kinds of training, how to do a search, some basic medical training, some basic using maps and GPS, some basic training for that, all kinds of things. So that's through, the sheriff's office has a search and rescue coordinator, and he's the one hired person, and everyone else are just volunteers. And we've got probably about 300 volunteers, but not all of them are active. I would say there's some that just love to do it and they respond often.
Okay.
And maybe that's 20% of all of the 300. But we do have some who are really passionate. And so if we have a missing person, especially in winter or in the high heat of summer, they want to find that person, then we may bring in the search and rescue team to help find them.
Okay.
So, and they've actually gone out after lost hikers, and as I said, lost skiers, etc. So the volunteer program, that's one aspect of it. We also have amateur radio volunteers. We've got a strong team for that. We have humane evacuation animal rescue team, and those are those who are passionate about animals. We've got a nice team there, and they also get involved with fire evacuations to help evacuate, make sure pets and livestock.
Right, horses, cows, dogs,
so
cats.
they do some of that. They have a little, subgroup that does some of that. And then we have some other groups that are volunteers in Spokane County. They aren't under our program, but the sheriff's office has the Sheriff Community Oriented Policing Effort, SCOPE.
Okay.
We'll contact them if we need help and see, hey, are your volunteers, even though you're focused on crime prevention, would you be willing to help us in this disaster? Go door to door, because we need some help checking on people, and they'll do that. So we've had them get involved. The Red Cross has volunteers. We try and help support them. Salvation Army has volunteers. There's a lot of organizations that do volunteer work, and many times we will try to work with them if we need more volunteers in a disaster. We are actually pretty fortunate in Spokane, even though, yes, we have had more disasters than in past year, than some years ago. They are a little more frequent, the windstorms and the wildfires and snowstorm, all of these things are happening a little more frequently. But overall, we're pretty fortunate. We don't have hurricanes.
Right.
We don't have tsunamis. We're not at the coast. So thankfully, we could have an earthquake, but chances are it's not going to be a major earthquake.
Well, I think during the last bout, I think a chair moved a couple of inches. That's pretty, that could be pretty devastating.
But that's, exactly, very devastating. However, if there is a major earthquake on the west side, we're going to have to help.
Right.
They're going to have some major devastation that they're going to need support from the east side of the state. That's just inevitable.
Right.
So, but other than that, we are fairly fortunate. We also don't have major tornadoes. We've had little ones. We've had little touchdowns of very tiny tornadoes. They've caused a teeny bit of damage, but we are also fortunate we don't have any major tornadoes.
Yeah,
luckily.
We are a very blessed area.
In that way, yes. We could have some floods. The Little Spokane has flooded. We have had to do some sandbagging along the Little Spokane River. But the Spokane River also could flood, but we fortunately have the dams that we can help release some of that water. So it hasn't gotten bad enough that the dams couldn't handle it. But that could happen. But again, we've been very fortunate. We haven't had enough water to cause that kind of devastation.
Yeah, we are I live in Kokomo, which is, 18th and University area, And so I live on basically the top of the hill, and there has been times where it's really, really rained, and I have three, what are they called? Where the water goes down.
The drains,
drain
the
things.
storm
drains.
Storm drains, yes.
Okay, so I have three, at the corner there, because I live at the corner, I have three storm drains right there, and when they'll get plugged up, the water starts rising.
Yes.
And, I've had it several times where it's actually coming into my driveway or, in that, but because I live on the top of the hill and the road's going down, it won't, it'd have to be incredible to get me, but going down that hill.
Well, we have encouraged, and actually we haven't, I should say, Public Works or our roads department, they have asked people during storms to try and clear those drains so that they don't get clogged.
Right.
Because they don't want you to have to deal with any type of flooding.
Right.
And hopefully, if those drains are working well and people keep them cleared, the water will just keep moving through. But there have been times where they've gotten clogged up. I've seen Trent get flooded and they've had to have Department of Transportation come out because Trent is actually Highway 290, so the DOT comes out and helps clear some of those drains because they've gotten clogged, and that just happens because of debris.
Right.
It just builds up.
We get a huge amount of rain in just a short time.
Exactly, and it can cause a lot of debris. But hopefully, you hope everybody's working together, and in a major incident or disaster, people want to help each other and they want to work together, and that's the best part. So if anyone wants to volunteer, if you go to our website and you click on individual, and there will be a volunteer opportunities page and a volunteer application page. You don't have to get involved right away. Maybe you just want to get involved in case of a disaster. There's also a team called DART, Disaster Assistance Response Team. And basically, we will just contact people in the event of an emergency or disaster where we need help.
Okay.
So they would just be on our books to be contacted in the event of that. And I have about 200 volunteers listed in DART, people who say, hey, well, I don't really want to do search and rescue, or some do. We have some search and rescue or also want to be part of DART. But we have some volunteers say, no, I just want to be called if there is a need.
Okay.
And so that's what we have, a list of volunteers just for that.
See, and I'll put links to that.
Yeah, great. There's actually a button for DART right on the homepage.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll put a link to your homepage, and then they can go from there.
Yes, they can easily find those other pages. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lots of good info.
Let's see. We kind of covered this, but what is your role in SCEM?
Oh, okay. So alert and warning is my main area of focus. Because alert and warning is so important, we want to be sure, and they call those notifications or emergency messages, or they call it mass notification because it's going out to a lot of people. So what I have had to do, we had to purchase a software to help notify the community. And then after that, we had to train people on how do you launch an alert. And then are these alerts effective? Are people listening to these alerts? And so what we found is that not a lot of people don't want to register to receive an alert. So the organization that's in charge of this Code Red software, they also bring in the white pages and any public information that gives contact information of the community. So we can still reach out to people. We still have a way, even if they haven't registered. But then we also have this other side, the federal alerting system, which is the wireless emergency alert, and it's also what's called an EAS, emergency alert system, alert that goes through radio and TV. Those are through the federal system. And so we have to make sure everyone is trained, our duty officers are trained. How do we do that? How do you launch those alerts? Those are more complicated, so people have to be trained. So a big part of my role is making sure everyone is trained to launch alerts, make sure we have templates, meaning what type of messages do we want to send so
Okay.
that people understand what's going on. And we also have to do training to make sure we're including what people can do. Is there a shelter for them to go to? Or is
Okay.
there information, a website they should be looking at? Or in the case of evacuations, our Regional Emergency Communications Group, the SREC, SHREC, they have an interactive evacuation map.
Oh, wow.
So when there's a major wildfire, we can launch the evacuation website, and the people can check, hey, am I in the evacuation zone? So there's a lot of things that need to happen. So alert and warning is a big part of my job, I would say. And then the other part is this volunteer coordination to make sure we have training available for some of the volunteers. We have some, we offer first aid, CPR, and AED training just for volunteers. We also want them to learn a bit about how incident command works, so they can go. It's a free online training through FEMA, through the FEMA Emergency Management Institute. They can learn some training about how incidents work and how incident commanders manage a major incident. And then we also have bloodborne pathogens. We want people to understand if they come in contact with blood, what are the risks? And so we like to have them to do that training. And then for disasters, we usually do on-the-job training. You know, some of it, we don't know what we're going to need. So we don't do a lot of training ahead of time, but we will do training on the job when people are needed. Another training, it's called the Community Emergency Response Team, CERT. That's a national training. In November of this year, November 19th through 21st, our state CERT coordinator is bringing training to Spokane Valley.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah. So that's
Do
also
we have a
another
link available so I could put it on my,
Yep, I can get you that.
that'd be
Yep.
great.
I think I actually just have to give you a document, and they register by contacting the CERT coordinator.
Okay.
So I'll get you a document.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so that's another training, and that would help out in a disaster as well. If people are interested, there's some medical training, somehow if you have to evacuate someone from a building, what do you need to do? So there's some basic training that's with that. It's also no charge, and usually you get a few supplies, a backpack, et cetera, if you are part of that program. So it's a pretty neat program as well.
Well, the thing is, training is never a bad thing.
Oh, no.
In an emergency, you will always revert back to your level of training.
Right, correct.
If you have none, that's what you're going to revert to.
Right, correct.
And so, you know, I was in the Army decades ago, so, you know, at least I have some training.
Right.
But,
Right.
you know, I forgot and this and that, so, you know, I'm actually looking into things like this, because if you come across a car accident, you're the first person, you're the first responder.
Right. At
And
that moment,
At
yeah.
that moment, you're the guy who...
And if you don't have training, you really can't respond.
Right,
You can only, to be protected by the Good Samaritan law, you can only respond with the level of training that you have. So if you really,
Oh.
and that's really important. But if you have had CPR, and you have had, or maybe you're a doctor or nurse, then wow, you come across an incident, maybe an accident, maybe you can help somebody.
Right.
But maybe you can't. Maybe you have to wait for firefighters anyway because they may be stuck in the vehicle. You've got to be careful of moving someone, you know. So there's so many things. But if you have the training,
right,
why not
right,
try and help out?
right.
So,
Because
yeah.
you could be there to save that person's life.
Right, you could offer CPR, maybe just, you know, doing the compressions on their heart. Just that, they say, just by keeping someone, can keep someone alive until the medics get there. So learning how to do that CPR is a great tool and has helped save many, many lives. And that's all people knew how to do? Great, just do that until
Right.
the first responders get there.
Right, Right.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, because I mean, in any emergency, you're the first person. I mean, they
Try to do what you can, yeah.
like, anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
So, okay. Again, we're kind of covering these, but what did SCEM, or was SCEM called in during the Medical Lake fire 2 summers ago, and what did they do?
well, there's a lot of things that we did. But basically, what happened is we provided resources for the firefighters and law enforcement, make sure they had the equipment and whatever they needed. But then we also set up a disaster assistance center, and there were many levels. So that is really a whole conversation in itself.
Thank you for watching the second part of my interview with Simone Ramel-McKay. Because hope is not a plan, we aim to help you become more self-sufficient by providing links to materials to aid you on your journey. So thank you for watching, and we hope that you like and share this video and leave a comment below.